Welcome to another Quran study. God willing, today we'll be reading from Surah 9, verse 65. Let's all seek refuge in God from Satan the rejected. Auzubillahi minash shaitanir rajim. Bismillahir rahmanir rahim. If you ask them, they would say, "We were only mocking and kidding." Say, do you not realize that you are mocking God and His revelations and His messenger? Do not apologize. You have disbelieved after having believed. If we pardon some of you, we will punish others among you as a consequence of their wickedness. The hypocrite men and the hypocrite women belong with each other. They advocate evil and prohibit righteousness, and they are stingy. They forgot God, so He forgot them. The hypocrites are truly wicked. God promises the hypocrite men and the hypocrite women, as well as the disbelievers, the fire of hell wherein they abide forever. It suffices them. God has condemned them. They have incurred an everlasting retribution. So these verses are talking about the hypocrites, and God says that the hypocrites mock and ridicule God and His revelations, and it's evident. Sometimes we come across people that do it very openly, while there are others who may do it in a more subtle way. Nevertheless, or there are people who may not really say it, but God witnesses their innermost thoughts. But nevertheless, these people are mocking God and His revelations and His messenger, right? And these are people who say they believe, but they're actually hypocrites. And so, I mean, it's hard to to wrap your head around it. And they said that we were only mocking and kidding. And God says that these are people, that are exposed at that point, and once a lot of these people, once they're exposed, I guess some of them will even try to apologize, and when we need to understand, like, when a hypocrite apologizes, like, what value does it really have, like, if someone's exposed to you as a hypocrite and then they apologize, it doesn't mean that they're no longer a hypocrite because they apologize. I mean, a hypocrite will remain a hypocrite, and even if they apologize, they will do it to the face value. I mean, they were trying to deceive you before. Now that they're exposed, they'll still want to continue to deceive you, so they may apologize. And we can see this sort of back and forth, activity from the hypocrites to try to stay on the good side of the believers, so they can continue to manipulate them and uh, and be hypocrites who will spread doubt, cause disputes, and nothing good will ever come from them, or nothing good will ever come from having them around you or you being around them. And hence, when they apologize, the response here is that you have disbelieved after having believed. If we pardon some of you, we will punish others among you as a consequence of their wickedness. So this is God saying that you have disbelieved after having believed. If we pardon some of you, we will punish others among you as a consequence of their wickedness. The hypocrite men and hypocrite women belong with each other. They stand for the same thing. They advocate evil and they prohibit righteousness. The believers on the other side do the exact opposite. They advocate righteousness and prohibit evil. But the hypocrite men and women will will promote evil, and they will prohibit righteousness, And so, like, a good example for that, is, let's say, you know, righteousness in one example would be to, advocate submitting to God alone, upholding the Quran alone. But then these people will prohibit that and look for other ways and advocate evil and advocate innovations and advocate attributing lies to God. And God says another way of recognizing these people is that they're very stingy, you know, and and I mean, I think that, like, I find that very consistent with like, at least from my personal experience with the people that I've met, that I've come to learn as are hypocrites. For most of them, like, this thing stands out very clearly, that they're very stingy people. Because, and why are they stingy? Because the believers, they're they're they understand that their spending is in the cause of God, that even if they're helping someone, it's in the cause of God. They understand that it's for the hereafter, and they're not greedy, and they don't love the money too much, right? So they're naturally not going to be stingy. And so recognizing a person based on that is, it's one of the qualities, right? But for example, I can't use just, look, I can't just see one trait, for example, and conclude that, if a person's stingy, that means they're a hypocrite, right? I mean, someone could have a weakness, for example, and being stingy, may need to come over it and, fix themselves. But if you start to see a pattern of all the qualities, um, in a person that God describes as that of a hypocrite, and this happens to be one of them, then this will be a confirmation in a lot of those scenarios that this person is a hypocrite. When you see them being so stingy with their wealth, and especially when dealing with the believers, as God says. So God says this is because they forgot God, and so He forgot them. And God says the hypocrites are truly wicked. And God says He promises them the fire of hell wherein they abide forever, and that God has condemned them to eternal uh, retribution in hell, right? So, and God says, these are the people that are destined for the lowest pit of hell. So, something for the hypocrites to notice, right? That God is saying here, but obviously they couldn't because they're blocked. But for the believers, I guess it's a lesson that we shouldn't be like them, or we shouldn't be around them, because we don't want to end up in their position. If you are with them, you're going to end up like them, and they will rub off on you, and they'll take you with them. And that's why God tells us to stay away from such people. God's system, and of course, God's system dictates that, the hypocrites stay with the hypocrites. The hypocrite men and women, God couples them together, um, and groups them together. They're always allies of one another. They always find out ways to connect and scheme together, um, and do things, to hurt the believers, right? The believers, on the other hand, are united, and they're always together in support of God, and God promises them salvation, as we know. So God willing, continue reading verse 69. It says, God's system does not change. Some of those before you were stronger than you and possessed more money and children. They became preoccupied with their material possessions. Similarly, you have become preoccupied with your material possessions, just like those before you have become preoccupied. You have become totally heedless, just as they are heedless. Such are the people who nullify their works both in this world and in the hereafter, they are the losers. So God tells us that His system does not change, and people who possess more money and children, um, they were stronger, but because they became preoccupied with the material things, um, you know, obviously it didn't help them. And God says these people nullify their works because they idolize these things, right? And once you commit idol worship, all your works are nullified. And so, being preoccupied with your material wealth, being occupied with your children, with your money, it is something serious, right? I mean, um, it's very hard for people to get over it when they have a lot. Um, for a lot of people, it is easier to focus on God if they don't have a lot of distractions. But nevertheless, these distractions are around us to test us on how we're going to respond, and if we're still going to worship God. As we know that God gave Solomon, the prophet, a lot of wealth, a lot of, God says, vast material wealth, right? But he steadfastly submitted. And when he became preoccupied with the horses one day to the point where he missed his afternoon prayer, he didn't want Satan to make a claim um, about him in any way regarding his material wealth. So he's very careful not to make his material possessions his God. And God tested him with the most difficult um, test in terms of material wealth, the abundance of it. And he continued to submit to God, right? Through all the blessings. And not only is it a test that you just have to, like, say, you have all the wealth and you have to do your prayers and everything, but you have to remember that you have all these blessings coming your way left and right. And you also don't want to be unappreciative, of all these things. So you have to thank God for everything and recognize all your blessings, which we have to keep actively counting our blessings. So, and when we're doing that, you're not being preoccupied with your wealth. You're actually remembering God. So you're using it as a way to remember God. Your material wealth, even, and your children. You're using it as a way to remember God instead of being preoccupied with them. But obviously that's not all he was doing. He was also striving in the cause of God, spreading the truth, inviting people to righteousness, judging among the people, as we know from the Quran, and doing all the righteous deeds that all submitters are required to do based on Quran. He was a submitter to God alone, and so we're all required to be that way. However, these people who are not guided by God, when God gives them wealth and money and children, I mean, we see all the time, people on social media with showing off their vast material wealth, or children, or all those extravagant trips or cars, exotic houses and cars, and all kinds of material wealth. I mean, the hypocrites are known for that, right? I mean, if you look at the Arabs, and you Google, what these people are doing, I mean, they're just lost in their material wealth. I mean, with so much of it, they're not spending it in the righteous causes. You see, for example, if you go to Saudi Arabia, you see people, on the streets, 2, 3-year-old kids on the streets, sitting there with very little clothes and people begging and, just in complete poverty, right? And then there you have people who are so rich, they're richer than the British royal family, and God knows, what other, amounts of hidden wealth they may have in this world, right? But they're so stingy and so unjust with their wealth that you have people that are homeless and children that are starving with no food and no shelter, in utter misery, and and that just reflects how bad it is, and it just keeps getting worse, every day, as we can see. So that shows to us that the hypocrites, I guess, as an example, that they're stingy. They would rather want other people to suffer, and they want as much wealth as possible that they can hoard for themselves. Right now, you are seeing that, in different. I mean, we can see that anywhere in the world, right? I mean, you have people calling themselves believers in God, whether it's they think whoever that God is, some people think Jesus is God, and some people say, God alone, but, still, there are people who are hypocrites. They're not submitters to God, and you see them having no care in the world for anyone but themselves, and they want to hoard the money and children and not give to anybody else, and it doesn't. And the amazing thing is that it doesn't. No matter how much of that they may have, it's never gonna be enough for them. So they're never gonna find peace. They're never gonna find any happiness, and they're always gonna be complete losers because this material possession is not gonna fill the void in an empty soul, which can only be filled by remembering God and having contentment of growing your soul and making your soul grow by remembering God, doing the practices of worship, making God your God, right? And so God says, these people nullify their works both in this world and in the hereafter. They're the losers. So it's not like they're only losing in the hereafter. They're not winners in this world either. They're living a miserable life and they're not happy, and they want to show off to people as if they're somebody or something, but their lives are full of misery. And an ordinary person with a short insight, or may not see that instantly, but it's very evident, for someone who is a student of the Quran and a submitter to God, that you know these people are unhappy, right? Because you have all these people, even themselves, saying that they're not happy, right? Once they get the wealth, that enough wealth that they understand that they have no more desire um, I mean, even though people say that they don't have any desire to get richer, they're still trying to get richer. But the fact that they will tell you that it doesn't, after, I mean, every rich person will even tell you that after a certain period of time, the amount of happiness they say, according to them, that it brings, becomes less and less, right? Like they have like this, come up with like this graph that they say, if you don't have, money at all, like say you don't have money to uh, buy a house or something, and all of a sudden you get enough money to buy a house, like, yeah, the money can make you happy, but let's say you already have a house, let's say you already have 5 or 10 homes, then what else are you going to do with the money, right? You're going to buy a yacht, you're going to buy a plane, like, so you have a plane, a yacht, what, what are you going to do after that, right? Then you're going to buy an island, but, I mean, all these things, at some point, like, it has no meaning for these people, right? And they realize that, this doesn't bring them happiness. A lot of people are still stupid enough to not even get that at that point and still just continue to hoard until God says they go to the graves, which is sad, and you may think like they got a lot, but they live in misery and they die with regrets, especially once their soul is about to leave. Then they see what's really ahead and what they should have really been worried about when they were in this world. Instead of trying to hoard as much material as possible, they should have tried to worship God and grow their soul as much as they could. uh, God, we're going to continue reading verse 70. It says, the losers, have you not learned anything from the previous generations? The people of Noah, Ad, Thamud, the people of Abraham, the dwellers of Midian, and the evil doers of Sodom and Gomorrah? Their messengers went to them with clear proofs. God never wronged them. They are the ones who wrong their own souls. And I love the subtitle here. You know, it says the losers, right? Uh, these are the real losers, right? And for people, who think that, uh, being a loser means like, having no friends or something like that. No. The real loser is someone who loses his soul on the day of judgment and ends up, burning in hell forever. Right? That's a real loser. And um, so God says that these people are the real losers because, um, you know, these were they're the people who are going to be with such people, and the likes of such people were the people of Noah who disbelieved, people of Ad and Thamud who were annihilated, the people of Abraham, the dwellers of Midian, and the evildoers of Sodom and Gomorrah. And we say we have a lot of evildoers in our society now, in our generation, in our era, who are the likes of these people that God annihilated. Um, and some of them are annihilated individually because God's system does not change, as it says, and some of them are annihilated in groups, and some of them will be annihilated in entire communities. Depending on the circumstances of who they are and who and if there are believers around them or not, and if there are people among them that are asking for forgiveness, and um, so based on those things, like, they may either get a collective punishment or individual punishment, you know um, uh, where they may be like, someone could get cancer, someone could get AIDS, etc. But if you have an entire nation that is completely lost, with the likes of, people of Noah and Ad and Thamud and Sodom and Gomorrah, they will be annihilated collectively. Like, for example, the Arabs, who are going to be annihilated by the smoke pretty soon, God willing. And God says He never wronged them. They're the ones who wrong their own souls. And so, really, God doesn't inflict an Adam's weight of punishment on anyone. It's the human being who decides to go against God's system and wants misery for themselves, right? God, we know that, our souls are part of God, and if we don't grow our souls, we will not be able to withstand God's physical presence, and we'll go to hell. God forbid, those among us who fail to grow our souls will go to hell on their own volition. And uh, this is why we're here. This is why we're trying to grow our souls so we can be among the winners. Now, God talks about the winners in verse 71. It says the winners, the believing men and women, are allies of one another. They advocate righteousness and forbid evil. They observe the contact prayer salat and give the obligatory charity zakat, and they obey God and His messenger. These will be showered by God's mercy. God is Almighty, most wise. God promises the believing men and the believing women gardens with flowing streams wherein they abide forever, and magnificent mansions in the Garden of Eden. And God's blessings and approval are even greater. This is the greatest triumph. So just as God says that the hypocrites are allies of one another, they belong with one another, um, they advocate evil and they prohibit righteousness. Quite in contrast, the believing men and women are allies of one another. They advocate righteousness and they forbid evil. They stand up for the truth. They prohibit what is false, um, and what is evil and what is satanic. They have no problem calling it out as it is. And God says they observe the contact prayer, salat, give the obligatory charity, and they obey God and obey the messenger. Right? They follow God's law, and God says He promises them, um, whether you're a man or a woman, He promises the believing men and women gardens with flowing streams. The allegorical descriptions, even though they're allegorical, they're there to help us understand um, what it is could be like for people to be in paradise. And God talks about gardens with flowing streams, beautiful surroundings, luxurious furnishings, drinks that are never polluted or sinful, beautiful clothes, jewelry. I mean, whatever nice, pleasant things you can think of and associate with as a good quality of life, a peaceful living, happy living. I mean, God promises that for the believers for eternity, right? And God says, and these are just things that are that are just as the messenger calls it, the side effects of worshiping God alone. We're not doing, we're not worshiping God alone because we want to go to heaven and we just want all these blessings, like the material blessings, so to speak, of being in heaven and having the gardens of flowing streams and companions to be with this as our spouses in the hereafter, and having our families join us in paradise. We're really doing it because we worship God alone, and we realize uh, that God alone is the Lord of the heavens and the earth. I mean, that's it, right? And when God alone is the Lord of the heavens and the earth, it means that we are created as creatures only to worship God alone, to prove that God is our God, going to be our God, and we're not going to be constituents of Satan, right? Because that obviously is not the right path for us, and the only path for us forward is to worship God alone. Imagine if there was no promise of paradise. What if we just had to I don't know, live in a box, right? Where we would just get maybe 3 or 4 meals, let's say, right? What would we decide to do then? Would we still worship God alone, or would we go with Satan, right? I mean, but the thing is, like, the truth is evident to us. The reason why we should worship God alone is simply because He is the Lord of the heavens and the earth. He's the creator of the heavens and the earth. So there is no reason for us to be alive except to worship Him alone, right? And grow our souls by doing that, because that is what gives us joy and happiness in our soul. Uh, Even if let's say there was no paradise and we still worship God, people who truly love God, it makes them happy. It gives them peace and joy to worship their Creator, and so because they realize that He is the Lord of the heavens and the earth, so they'll worship Him. And that's why we should worship God. We shouldn't choose to be with God because God promises, all these beautiful blessings, but the believers get them as side effects, anyways. And God says, and that's why God says, and God's blessings and approval are even greater. This is the greatest triumph. So you get all of that and more on top of that, right? And these are just the things that we know of, things that we can partly fathom. Actually, is interesting. It reminds me of this clip I was watching from one of the actors, and on one of the late night talk shows, and the host asked him, like, what happens after death, and his answer was actually pretty good. I think he said, like, he says, like, he doesn't have the DNA or the capacity to describe what it's actually like, right? But he says, do we die? What happens after we die? And he says, I don't think we die. And he says, I don't think we have the capacity to understand time and space based on our DNA and our abilities. Like we just understand time and clock no better than a dog it does, and actually that was and I when you think about it in this context, like it really makes a lot of sense. That how we don't understand what it's like in the heaven. We don't understand the concept of eternity. It's hard to fathom it, and all the blessings that God talks about regarding paradise and the concept of hell. We have allegories to understand them, but we can only truly experience it when we leave this world, to see what that actually looks like. And of course, God tells us, what we're going to expect. So that is clear to us, but it's still, until we actually see it, it's really, it's like someone talking to you about chocolate for like eternity, but you will not understand what it is like to taste it until you actually taste it, right? And I think that's a very good example regarding that. So God, when I read verse 73, it says, "You shall be stern with the disbelievers. O you prophet, strive against the disbelievers and the hypocrites, and be stern in dealing with them. Their destiny is hell, what a miserable abode. They swear by God that they never said it, although they have uttered the word of disbelief. They have disbelieved after becoming submitters. In fact, they gave up what they never had. They have rebelled, even though God and his messenger have showered them with his grace and provisions. If they repent, it will be better for them. But if they turn away, God will commit them to painful retribution in this life and in the hereafter. They will find no one on earth to be their Lord and Master." So, very strong verses, as we know, but God says that these are God's commandments, right? That God says, "You shall be stern with the disbelievers." Now, many people will try to spin it in a way like, no, just like you just have to be stern. Like, stern doesn't mean this and stern doesn't mean that. But God actually talks about being stern with them, like it actually means to be stern with these people, right? And if you don't understand the meaning of stern, I mean, you could just look it up in the dictionary, and you don't have to redefine the word. Uh, uh, and so, I mean, God says they're harsh and stern, right? And the messenger of the covenant has explained that in detail. Also, he said the believers are kind and compassionate with each other like pussycats, and they are harsh and stern with the disbelievers like lions. You know, and there's several examples, right? So it just comes naturally when you see hypocrisy and when you see disbelief. It doesn't bring any feelings of pleasantness or niceness in any believer. You could be the most kindest person on earth, but if you truly love God the most and you see just wickedness and evil, you know it's bound to bring out a reaction that's going to be stern, and it's going to come off as harsh because it is what is called for. Obviously you don't have to get angry and you don't have to lose your temper, but you can call you still have to call it as what it is, and you can't do it with a smile on your face because you're not conveying the right emotion or the right tone or the seriousness of the situation. So naturally, you're going to be harsh and stern. Long story short, and God says these people, they try to deceive the believers even after getting exposed. So to the point that they will swear to God that they never said it. So having you have a conversation with these people, for example, and they'll say something that proves that they're hypocrites, and then they'll say, "No, I never said that." And but obviously in this example, you see that, the belief, even after this response, that they say they never said it. You know, God says that they have actually said it, and they have actually disbelieved after believing, and they gave up what they never had, which was the belief of a submitter. And they rebelled. Um, they rebelled because um, they were rebels. They weren't really submitters, and they decided to uh, be with the objectors and be with the people who are unappreciative. And they lost everything that was coming to them from God. And God says, even then, God says, if they repent, it would be best for them. But would they repent? If they're hypocrites, they wouldn't. If they're hypocrites, they're just going to go to the lowest pit of hell. I mean, if they were on the verge of maybe becoming a hypocrite or a believer, I mean, they would decide to believe and become believers, right? But the hypocrites are actually those whose doubts are taken over. Nevertheless, we understand that there's two types of people. There's believers, and then there's disbelievers. They could be idol worshippers. They could be hypocrites. But I mean, you can also describe them in three different categories. But um, there are two main categories, right? With the disbelievers and the hypocrites being in the same category, like the idol worshippers or hypocrites, all fall under the category of believers. You have heaven and hell, and you have believers and disbelievers. But among the disbelievers, you have these other categories. So you could describe them in three categories, but really there are just two main categories um, of people. And if you're in one, and as far as God is concerned, you're either a believer or a disbeliever, right? There's no in between. So God willing, we make the right choices, and we stay on the path with the believers until we die. Verse 75 says, some of them even pledged, if God showered us with his grace, we would be charitable and would lead a righteous life. But when he did shower them with his provisions, they became stingy and turned away in aversion. Consequently, he plagued them with hypocrisy in their hearts, till the day they meet him. This is because they broke their promises to God, and because of their lying. Do they not realize that God knows their secrets and their conspiracies, and that God is the knower of all secrets? Those who criticize the generous believers for giving too much and ridicule the poor believers for giving too little, God despises them. They have incurred a painful retribution. So we see here that, whoa, I think I really need to speed up. I lost track of time here. So God says that there are people, these were people that were at some point, on the path of becoming submitters. They promised to God, they prayed to God that if God, showered them with his grace, they were praying to God that, asking God that if God showered them with the grace, they would be charitable and would lead a righteous life. And then when God did shower them with the provisions, they actually turned away in aversion and did not spend in the cause of God. Instead, they became stingy. And because of that, God says he plagued them with hypocrisy. So the disease set in because they decided to become stingy. Now, they wouldn't have become stingy if they didn't believe in the hereafter. If they truly believe in the hereafter, they would be generous because they were paying towards their post-retirement account, and it wouldn't stop them from spending in the cause of God. They would be doing it with pleasure. But because they didn't have a belief in the hereafter, they became stingy with their wealth, and consequently, God plagued them with hypocrisy, and they became hypocrites. Because they broke their promises to God, they lied to God by saying that they would give to charity if he showered them with blessings, and then they did the complete opposite. And God says he knows their conspiracies and their secrets. And also, interestingly, verse 79 talks about those who criticize the generous believers for giving too much and ridicule the poor believers for giving too little, God despises them. They have incurred a painful retribution. So we should never criticize someone for being generous or ridicule someone for giving too little, right? But it's different, for example, if someone is very stingy on one extreme, or if someone is being extravagant. You can even be extravagant or stingy, just like you can be stingy, you can also be extravagant in spending in the cause of God. God doesn't want us to be extravagant either. Even when it comes to striving in the cause of God and spending in the cause of God, God wants us to give in moderation, right? But even while we're giving in moderation, we can still be generous, you know? Moderation doesn't mean that you don't have to be generous in giving something, right? For example, like, I don't know, like, let's say I made 4 cups of coffee, right? And someone comes over and I offer him a cup. I could offer him a cup, but let's say I give him a cup and a half. That's fine. But what if I gave him all the 4 cups? Now that's extravagance, right? But generosity is me giving him a cup and a half or 2 cups. That's generous, right? And you shouldn't be criticized for that, because you're doing it in the cause of God from the pleasure, because you want to help. And you can't criticize people for doing that. Like, you can't say anything to criticize these people, or the people who are poor. You can't ridicule them because they don't have enough to spend in the cause of God. So we have to remember these things. There's clearly a balance that God is talking about here, right? When it's talking about too much and too little and not being extravagant. So there is a balance, right, in everything, and that's why we're being reminded of these things. So the believers are guided in the right path, and we should give from the excess to charity, on top of our um, obligatory charity if we can, but God says, without neglecting your own share in this world, right? If you start neglecting your own share, then you're being extravagant, and God says, don't open your hand up foolishly, lest you end up blamed and sorry, and it's being unappreciative of God. And God says, those who are extravagant, they are the brethren of the devil. So we have to put everything in context and make a decision, based on that. So God will now continue reading, skim through the rest of the verses, and then we can talk about it, because I'm running over time, actually. So Satan's most effective bait, the myth of intercession. Whether you ask forgiveness for them or do not ask forgiveness for them, even if you ask forgiveness for them 70 times, God will not forgive them. This is because they disbelieve in God and his messenger. God does not guide the wicked people. The sedentary rejoiced. I wish I had more time to discuss these verses. The sedentary rejoiced in their staying behind the messenger of God, and hated to strive with their money and their lives in the cause of God. They said, let us not mobilize in this heat. Say, the fire of hell is much hotter, if they could only comprehend. Let them laugh a little and cry a lot. This is a requital for the sins they have earned. If God return you to a situation where they ask your permission to mobilize with you, you shall say, you will never again mobilize with me, nor will you ever fight with me against any enemy, for you have chosen to be with the sedentary in the first place. Therefore, you must stay with the sedentary. You shall not observe the funeral prayer for any of them when he dies, nor shall you stand at his grave. They have disbelieved in God and his messenger, and died in a state of wickedness. And the footnote for verse 80 says, if Muhammad could not intercede on behalf of his own uncle and cousins, what makes strangers who never met him think that he will intercede on their behalf? Abraham could not intercede on behalf of his father, nor could Noah intercede on behalf of his son. 1146 and 64. Verse 85, worldly materials are nil. Do not be impressed by their money or their children. God causes these to be sources of misery for them in this world, and their souls depart as disbelievers. When a surah is revealed stating, believe in God and strive with his messenger, Even the strong among them say, let us stay behind. They chose to be with the sedentary. Consequently, their hearts were sealed, and thus they cannot comprehend. True believers are eager to strive. As for the messenger and those who believed with him, they eagerly strive with their money and their lives. These have deserved all the good things. They are the winners. Yeah, so mashallah, I mean, we can talk more about the remaining verses that we read, all of us, since I'm pretty much over time now. But mashallah, I mean, really amazing verses that, in summary, are talking about, striving in the cause of God and choosing not to be with the sedentary when God, um, has given us the opportunities and the blessings, um, and the means to strive in His cause. The believers are the ones who will run towards it, not run away from it, and they will eagerly strive. Not take it as a burden upon themselves, like, and repel other people to show off. Even, um, there's a good balance, and God willing, we can talk about it more in the comments. So if you guys have any comments or questions, please feel free. Thank you.
Oh, no, no, thank you. Very good, sir. Good verses. Yeah, I think some real important verses for us
Mm-hmm.
is not being distracted by the worldly
Mm-hmm.
materials. It can happen.
Mm-hmm.
Like you taking off. You can be sidetracked, and Satan can be very patient. With trying to find cracks and stuff. And mashallah, I like the example with Solomon, how he gave away his horses that he really liked too. You know, he
Mm-hmm.
didn't, he really liked them, but he
Mm-hmm.
nullified that claim and
Mm-hmm.
also, it grew his soul too. Uh,
Yeah, and that's interesting because we were just talking about extravagance, and you know how the Bible, they say he gave up all his wealth, right?
right. Yeah, you see, yeah, a lot of stuff is taken out of like they distort. There's so many
Mm-hmm.
distortions within the Bible, like with Lot and
Mm-hmm.
Noah. They exaggerate the ark because they lack. They want to. I think I don't know. Sound more impressive as the scribes and stuff who were.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I mean, I don't believe. He like. There's nothing about that in the Quran. So
Yeah, and it doesn't make sense either because historically speaking, like he was the king. Like, how did he get rid of all his wealth? Like, he didn't.
yeah, I mean, exactly. The heirs and stuff would have adopted it. Like
Mm-hmm.
you're not just gonna give it up to a bunch of
Mm-hmm.
disbelieving people
Mm-hmm.
or even people that you know.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah,
and
extravagance is that's true. Because if you um, God has given us these things, to be appreciative for, and it's almost like if you give, like if you're extravagant, you're it's kind of like if you gave me something or
mm-hmm.
like 4 cups of coffee and then I gave it all away. It's like,
Imagine if you
and he
drank
didn't even,
4 cups of coffee.
huh?
So imagine if you drank 4 cups of coffee.
Yeah, I think I drank like 4 espressos today
Oh,
at, at the airport. Well, just from the machine, but
uh
uh,
so
but it was over time. But yeah, you would think like man, this person doesn't even like my coffee or my coffee beans or anything. Like
Mm-hmm.
he's being unappreciative,
Right.
you know.
Mm-hmm.
It's or like someone cooks you a dinner, be generous and share with somebody, but you give away most of it, and
Mm-hmm.
then you're yeah. Plus, you don't want to put yourself in situations where let's say you have you're carrying $100 cash in your wallet, and then you give it most of it away for some reason, and then you find out your credit card or something doesn't work, and then now you end up sorry, instead of giving away like, you could have a situation like that.
Mm-hmm.
That almost happened to me. Brought it up. I don't know if I'd mentioned it before, but it was a similar situation, and I guess I was banking on being able to use a debit card that I had, and then I had
Mm-hmm.
maybe some walk around cash, and I was out, out traveling for work and stuff, and then
Right.
I ended up not breaking. I think whatever the bill was, it wasn't $100 or anything. It was a lot less, but bottom story is I ended up like, oh man, it ended up thinking about that verse, you know,
Mm-hmm.
about if you can put yourself in a bind trying to, in a way, like give in moderation, spend in moderation. Um, but of course, like if you have a lot, God's blessed you with a lot. You want to be generous and stuff, but not to the point where you put yourself in a difficult situation.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, like this one, yeah, you end up blamed and sorry. You end up, oh man, why did I do that?
Mm-hmm. I'll be right back. 1 second.
Something like,
Sorry, I'm back.
okay, what's up? Yeah, like verse 81, the sedentary rejoiced in their staying behind the messenger of God and hated to strive with their money and lives in the cause
Mm-hmm.
of God. It's interesting that the hypocrites are disbelievers, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like they don't actually believe in the hereafter. So that's why they have to, Because like if I had to, uh, let go of money or give up time or effort or something, but the return, let's say 20 to 50 years, early example,
Mm-hmm.
anybody believe that and like, would do it. But
Mm-hmm.
in that example, I guess they don't look at it like that.
Mm-hmm.
And of course we do it, too, because we love God and we're grateful we want to
Mm-hmm.
attain His, because um, like do anything and everything to
Mm-hmm.
help us. Uh, uh,
Exactly. Yeah, I mean, also God tells us about the myth of intercession here, right? I mean, intercession is uh, is something that these people believe in. You know, it's a bait from Satan to get all these idol worshippers to hell. I mean, if you believe that someone like Muhammad or Jesus, can intercede for you, for example, when people believe that Jesus died for their sins or something, um, it's kind of similar because um, it's a way of intercession, right? They think that Jesus will only the people who believe with Jesus so will be forgiven. So God will know like who believed in Jesus and
right,
and Jesus
exactly
will.
that.
Mm-hmm.
They call it the throne of judgment, and then they think that everyone is going to go before Jesus, and then they try to use the verse, "Oh, if you deny me, I'll deny you before the Father." But
Mm-hmm.
stuff like that, or like no one can come to me, no one can come to the Father but through me, and completely.
Mm-hmm. Right. So exactly the
I,
same. Yeah.
I actually plan on doing a pretty in-depth video about everything from the Quran, like all the verses about this, the
Mm-hmm.
appendix, and also the Bible's Jesus. A lot of the Book of John and Acts and stuff was quoted, and then also, using their own scripture. I mean, just like the messenger had, because
Mm-hmm.
sometimes, like if people are closed off, I found, they
Mm-hmm.
I think you can get them to think sometimes, like, look at this, from your own scripture. How does this, but I mean, if they have an ego, like they'll get real defensive and just kind of repair it. The same thing, like just the blind faith stuff. I mean, you really feel sorry for these people in a way, like because if they don't reform, or run away from their idol worship, they're gonna end up in like the worst destiny. I mean, these are hypocrites too. These Christians, they're full
Right.
of
Of
hypocrites.
course.
Even the
Yeah.
messenger. I
Yeah.
mean, all the ones I know, they're huge hypocrites. Like
Right.
they're gonna be in a little pit of hell too, because they're
Mm-hmm.
swearing, swearing that they believe in Jesus, swearing about that they're not idol worshippers and stuff, and then doing this, and then they don't. They're they're so bad. And then some of them are violence and belligerent signs of excessive disbelief, because they don't understand. Um,
Yeah. I think the worst ones are the ones that the believers think that they are believers. Like when we like in other areas, for example, they're the same in that sense. I think I don't know. Just think it out loud. For example, like even the people of Muhammad, they are called hypocrites, right? They say Muhammad is a messenger of God, and God says God bears witness that they're liars. And basically, we know that these are also hypocrites, right?
right,
So, but I mean, in essence, if you think about it that way, like anybody who doesn't worship God alone and says they believe in God, they're really hypocrites in that sense because they say they believe in God, but they really don't, you know? And that's
Right.
what makes them hypocrites in that sense, right? But,
Hmm.
like, for example, when the messenger talks about you're either destined for the highest of heaven or the lowest pit of hell, it's not talking about, like, the Christian hypocrites or, like, the other types of hypocrites, you know? But, like, someone who has the Quran and choose to be a disbeliever in some way, um, in our time, you know, would be would be in that category, you know. Maybe like in Jesus, like when Jesus is around and these people are there and they're submitters, and there's other people in them and they're not submitters, and they're hiding their beliefs and they're mingling with the believers, pretending to be believers. They have a special rank too, right?
Hmm.
And same way,
Right.
like these people have this special rank, just like as the people who are with the messenger and they're the pioneers and they have a special rank. You know, I mean, these people also have a special ranks. Like I think,
Yeah, I think so
you know.
too. Like, yeah, because it's early. It's you kind of talk about like the early generations,
Mm-hmm.
and like from each for each scripture
Mm-hmm.
and prophet or messenger.
Right, right. So I mean, have being someone who has the guidance, who has the scripture, who has the Quran, who has seen the miracle, claims to be a submitter. I guess you know. I mean, has seen has the responsibility. I guess all these things, I guess, make their ranks worse.
Hmm.
You know. I mean, they're
Yeah,
all
because
idol
it's
worshippers. All of them are going to burn in hell. You know. But they have ranks.
right. Yeah, because if they disbelieved after seeing all that, like we
Mm-hmm.
know they believed, like having not seen that, they would have been
Mm-hmm.
whatever level of disbelievers. But like it's a whole nother level, I think, when you give
Mm-hmm.
people um,
Mm-hmm.
such proof and time
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
study and then
Mm-hmm.
having a true messenger, and then they
Mm-hmm.
still end up disbelieving,
Mm-hmm.
like is really bad.
Mm-hmm. And you know, just think. Let's like I'm just thinking about it. Like you know, God is so just. Like he. I mean, he could just put all the disbelievers in hell, right? And everybody would be in the same hell and all be in misery. But they have ranks in hell, depending on their works. You know,
Yeah.
like it's like someone commits in this world. You know, someone commits 10 murders versus someone who commits 20 murders. You know, man, end up getting life in prison, but not in God's system. You know, they get exactly, you know, in comparison to what they did. You know, they get exactly the same retribution based
Yeah, I
on
like
their
it.
works.
It reminds me of that. I think one about the PowerPoint. About the myth of intercession. I think this is one of the verses I used,
Hmm.
and then about and stuff.
Which one?
Verse 80,
Uh huh. Right.
because it should make people think.
Hmm.
Um, but even it's like the verse that says they have no sure knowledge about this, and this
Hmm.
or it causes confusion, like even amongst Christians and Muslims too. I think that's why there's so many disputes, because they're fighting over human factors,
Hmm.
and they don't actually like have certainty or like actually believe. They think, oh, maybe the day of judgment or the white throne of judgment is going to happen. But and some people are like thinking the rapture, you know,
Hmm.
all these different belief systems and stuff. And it's if you look at how they're living their life. They're just living. I mean, they're just either devoted to their idols or devoted to worldly materials. You know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, also, look at verses 86, looking at verses 86 and 87. It says, when a seer was revealed, stating, believe in God and strive with his messenger, like these people are given the verses from the Quran to say, believe in God and strive with his messenger. But even then, the people who are strong among them decide to stay behind. People with opportunities, people with money. There's many people like that. You know, um, who God blesses with the means to strive with their skills. With their money. Um,
Resources. You
you
know.
know, like I've seen so many people that like are, I think, or not so many people, that many, but I guess quite a lot of people, I guess, that you see them and they have skills, they have money, you know, but they don't strive. They just live like the other people. I mean,
I
they.
mean, in a way, that like they're failing their test. You know, because the Quran
Mm-hmm.
says we will really test them with their money and their lives. And you know, if they're
Mm-hmm.
not, I guess, actively spending or like actively like their lives, actively
Mm-hmm.
uh striving, then
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I think it's a means too. If even if money isn't your means, but you still have, like, you're in a position where you
Mm-hmm.
have a lot of support, so you're
Yeah.
strong in that you have a lot of support,
Yeah.
so in a way you could have a lot of money. It's just not
Yeah.
directly
Yeah.
you have
I
a
mean, the
lot of
thing is,
support
if
and
you want to.
intelligence,
Yeah.
and then you choose not to
Mm-hmm.
do that, like that's, and
Mm-hmm.
then you choose to
Yeah.
you know, sedentary and return to a place where you're weaker. I mean, how does it even, you
Uh-huh.
know,
Yeah.
and not trusting in God either,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and really, I think it all
choosing to
starts
be
from a. Hmm?
idol worship. Yes, choosing also uh,
Mm-hmm.
surround yourself with knowing disbelievers
Mm-hmm.
and I mean, these are examples that I mean we've seen,
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
of
and I
or even
think. Yeah, and I think that it also it starts with your heart. I mean, if you, let's say you have nothing, but you want to strive in the cause of God, God will give you the means to strive. But like what these people did, as we see in the Quran, these people said, if God gave me money, I would strive, or God gave me the means, I would strive. But then even God said, even when He gave them the things, they didn't strive, and then they became hypocrites, as a result. So if someone was a believer and they didn't have the means, let's say, right, they would pray to God. God give them the means, and then they would strive. You know, but they chose not to strive, and that's why. I mean, even when God did give them the money, they still did not strive. And there are people that, and then there's people um, that spend money. God says, they give money grudgingly, and they do their contact prayers, but they do it lazily, right? And they do it only to show off, and they repel other people from the path of God. Like when you see these people doing something in the cause of God, that's actually a source of repulsion from those things, you know.
I think it's also in the Bible too. Um, about people praying for money and wealth, like, they'll be charitable, and then they end up it was just like all in vain. You know.
All right. Yeah, God says true believers are eager to strive in the cause of God. If someone's not eager to strive in the cause of God, they're not true believers. So simple.
That's true. What is verse 69? Is that referring to like the people of Muhammad at Muhammad's time?
Verse 69.
Yeah.
Um, God's
I
system does
guess
not
it
change.
happened.
I mean, it doesn't. It is in that sense.
Or
God's
maybe
not.
it could
It
just
could
be
be
speaking
anybody.
to people. Yeah, in
Anybody.
general.
Yeah. Because it says God's system does not change. Right. Applies to everybody.
Yeah,
Anybody
it
who
makes
becomes
sense,
preoccupied with
because
their
it's
money and children.
right. Yeah, it's a test. I think having the what show I was listening to. I think one of the conferences. I think the final
Mm-hmm.
conference, and I was like, I think I was kind of falling asleep to it or something, but something stuck with me. I heard messengers say, along the lines of, God is the only priority. Nothing. I need to re-listen to it, but it makes sense, because if you strive to do that, and it ties back into like making God your God 100% of the day, like striving for that or aiming for that, even if you don't, you know, get there.
Mm-hmm.
Um, nothing else matters. Not money. Nothing will bug you. You know.
Mm-hmm.
I also like one of the zikrs too. Just wherever you are, thinking about how God is with you. Like
Mm-hmm.
He's here in this room with you in the vehicle. He sees what
Mm-hmm.
you're saying. He hears what you're hearing, and even it's even more than that. But
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I've been working on more of that zikr recently, and it's very helpful, very nice.
Yeah. Yeah. Especially when you're by yourself.
Yeah, that's right. That's when it's like, especially when I'm driving and stuff. It's so that's very true.
Yeah. It gives it every time you do that. It um like God's. I mean, of course, it's a way of remembering God. But it also gives you this this sense of like tranquility and peace and security. Like doesn't matter, you could be in
Mashallah.
the
Yeah.
worst part of the
Yeah.
world, you know, uh, and once when you have that feeling, like that thought, you know, like it comes with that trust that you know when you know that God is there with you, that everything's gonna be fine, you know. So we need that
Mashallah.
like
Yeah.
all the time, you know.
That, yeah, it's like there's so many good zikrs we can,
Hmm.
like ways, and who is your God, like making God our God, and like
Hmm.
ask yourself, am I submitting or rejecting?
Hmm.
And or it's looking, just thinking about, oh man, thank God, like about, thinking about eyesight and just stuff, examples we've been told about. But yeah,
Hmm.
that's one of the ones where I think it's been helping me. Uh,
Hmm.
It's exactly what you said. It's like you get like a piece of, you get a sense of peace and tranquility. Exactly what you said,
Hmm.
and you feel very very at peace and comfortable,
Hmm.
you know, and just happy and
Exactly.
relaxed and stuff.
Yeah.
Very relaxed and safe and secure.
Hmm.
And you also rejoice in His mercy and not despair and um,
Hmm. Yeah, not despair. Yeah, exactly.
yeah, not despair and I like the verse too. You shall appreciate God's continuous mercy.
Hmm.
I mean, even like the most merciful people we might think, or people that have lived and stuff. I mean, they're not even merciful at all compared to God. I mean, it's thank
Hmm.
thank God. Mhm.
Because God is the most merciful. True. Right. Are there any other comments or questions from anyone? All right. So, what happened here? I don't hear anybody, but okay. So, I guess if there are no questions or comments from anyone, God willing, we can conclude our study. So, thank you all for joining us. God willing, our next English Quran study would be on Saturday at uh, 9:30 a.m. Pacific time. God bless you all. Assalamu alaikum.
God bless you all. Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum.
Assalamu alaikum. Thanks for having me.
Alaikum, brother.
Assalamu alaikum.